Frozen encounter. Commander Rena trudged through knee-deep snow, his breath creating misty clouds in the frigid mountain air. 3 days since their research vessel crashed and still no response to his distress signals. The Cryos Mountains were infamous for their signal-dampening properties. "Keep moving," he muttered to himself, adjusting the emergency pack on his shoulders. The temperature was dropping rapidly as darkness approached. Another night exposed in this wilderness would significantly reduce his survival chances. Rena had been mapping the outer territories when the storm hit, disrupting the ship's navigation system. Dr. Chen hadn't survived the impact, his body buried beneath a makeshift cairn of ice and stone 2 miles back. The guilt weighed as heavily as the cold. A flash of movement caught his eye from a narrow crevice in the ice wall to his right. Rena's hand moved instinctively to his blaster. "I can see you," he called firmly. "Come out slowly." After a tense moment, a figure emerged hesitantly from the shadows. Rena blinked in surprise. A woman stood before him, her skin a soft, luminescent purple, her long hair falling in dark waves around her shoulders. Her wide almond-shaped eyes regarded him with equal parts fear and desperation. An Iridon. Rena breathed, lowering his weapon. The purple-skinned species rarely ventured beyond their home system. "What are you doing out here alone?" "Not alone until recently," she replied, her voice melodic despite her obvious exhaustion. "My transport was attacked. Hunters," she explained with a shiver that seemed unrelated to the cold. "They took everyone else, hunters. They seek iridons for our bioelectric properties," she explained, touching her throat where a faint purple glow pulsed beneath her skin. "I'm Sarah," she added after a moment. "Commander Rena, orbital cartographer," he responded, extending his thermal jacket. "Here, take this. Human body temperature runs higher than yours." Sarah accepted the offering with trembling fingers. "The hunters will return," she warned, looking nervously at the darkening sky. "They track our energy signatures." Rena considered their options, studying the mountain range ahead. "There's a research outpost approximately 30 kilometers beyond that ridge," he said, pointing to a jagged peak. "I have supplies for perhaps 3 days." "Impossible," Sarah countered, her voice strengthening despite her fragile appearance. "The Cryos storms will kill anyone attempting to cross the central range. Staying here will kill us with certainty," Rena replied, shouldering his pack again. "I've navigated worse conditions. The question is, are you coming?" Their first night together was spent in tense silence within a hastily constructed ice shelter. Rena rationed their supplies while Sarah watched his every move warily. When exhaustion finally claimed him, he awoke hours later to find her pressed against his side, seeking warmth. "Your thermal output is remarkable," she murmured, her face inches from his. The proximity sent an unexpected jolt through Rena, one unrelated to her bioelectric nature. "These mountains," Sarah said as dawn broke tracing patterns on Rena's worn navigation display. "My people have ancient knowledge of them. Hidden passages exist beneath the ice. I can guide us, but—" She hesitated. "But what?" "The hunters who attacked my transport, they're led by someone called Kai. He's ruthless, obsessed with harvesting our bioelectric energy. They won't abandon the hunt easily." Rena checked his remaining ammunition and equipment. "Then we'll need to move quickly and quietly." "Why were you traveling through this sector?" Sarah's expression darkened. "I'm a researcher studying comparative nervous systems across species. My bioelectric signature is particularly strong, making me a valuable target." "You're with me now," Rena said with more confidence than he felt. "And I have a particular talent for impossible situations." As they set out, Rena noticed how Sarah moved with surprising grace despite her exhaustion. She led them to narrow ice tunnels he would have missed entirely, her knowledge impressive for someone who claimed to be merely a researcher. That night, a vicious storm trapped them in a narrow cave. As temperatures plummeted dangerously, Sarah began trembling violently. Without hesitation, Rena pulled her against his chest, wrapping them both in thermal blankets. "Your kind runs remarkably hot," she whispered, her face pressed against his neck. "Survival adaptation," he replied, trying to ignore the pleasant tingling where her skin touched his. "Humans are stubborn that way. We don't die easily. I'm beginning to understand why your species has such a formidable reputation." Sarah murmured, her fingers tentatively intertwining with his. "The bioelectric current in your nervous system, it's unlike anything I've studied. Strong, steady, yet distinctly different from my own." For the first time since the crash, Rena felt something beyond mere survival instinct. As they shared warmth and whispered stories of their respective worlds, An unexpected connection began to form, one that would soon be tested beyond anything either could imagine. Hidden passages. Dawn broke with knife-edge clarity, revealing a landscape transformed by the night's brutal storm. What had been merely challenging terrain yesterday now stood before them as a fortress of ice and treachery. "We need to reach the crystal passage by nightfall," Sarah said, her purple skin luminescent in the morning light as she pointed to a narrow cut between two towering peaks. "Otherwise, we'll be exposed when the temperature drops again." Rena squinted at the distance. "That's at least 15 kilometers of vertical climbing." 14.3. Sarah corrected, a hint of a smile playing across her lips. "Your species isn't known for its mathematical precision. We're known for getting things done," Rena retorted, adjusting his pack. 14.3 it is. The day became a brutal test of endurance. Twice they nearly lost footing on ice-slick ledges. Once Rena had to leap across a chasm, securing a line for Sarah to follow. Each time they recovered with growing synchronicity, his strength complementing her agility. Midday found them huddled against a rock face, sharing meager protein rations. Rena noticed Sarah shivering despite the brief appearance of sunlight. "Your physiology is different," he observed. "You need more energy than I do in this environment." She nodded reluctantly. "Iridons require additional calories to maintain our bioelectric field. The cold is draining me faster than expected." Without hesitation, Rena handed over his portion. "Take it, I've gone hungry before. Why would you sacrifice for me?" Her eyes, deep violet with flecks of silver, searched his face. "Because we're making it out together or not at all," Rena answered simply. As afternoon waned, Sarah stumbled more frequently. During one rest, she pressed her palm against an ice wall, closing her eyes in concentration. To Rena's amazement, faint purple light spread from her fingertips, illuminating what appeared to be hidden symbols within the ice. "What is that?" he asked, fascinated. "Ancient markers left by my ancestors," she explained, her voice weary but proud. "They traveled these mountains centuries ago, establishing energy paths. We're on the right track, but what? The markers warn of danger ahead. These mountains hold secrets beyond the storms." They pushed onward, the temperature dropping precipitously as shadows lengthened. Rena found himself supporting more of Sarah's weight with each passing hour. When they finally reached the crystal passage, both collapsed in exhaustion. "Tell me about your work," Sarah asked as they huddled together that night. "Why map these outer territories?" Rena was silent for a moment. "After the war, I needed space silence. Charting the unknown seemed appropriate. You were a soldier, commander of the orbital defense fleet. I led the final assault against the Carinian invasion." His voice grew distant. "We won, but the cost. Entire colonies lost." Sarah's hand found his in the darkness. "And Dr. Chen? You mentioned him in your sleep, my research partner. Brilliant scientist, terrible card player." Rena's throat tightened.
"He didn't survive our crash."
"I couldn't save him. Survivor's guilt is universal across species," Sarah said softly. "On my world, we believe energy never truly dissipates. It transforms. What about you?" Rena asked, changing the subject. "You said you're a researcher, but you navigate these mountains like someone with military training." Sarah tensed slightly. "My people are peaceful but not naive. All Iridon scientists receive survival training. The galaxy isn't always welcoming to those who are different." "And Kai, the hunter after you?" Rena pressed, sensing there was more to her story. Sarah's expression darkened. "He leads a group called the Harvesters. They believe our bioelectric energy can extend human life, perhaps even grant enhanced abilities." She shuddered. "I've seen what happens to those they capture. It's not a fate I would wish on anyone." As they continued through the hidden passages, Sarah's knowledge proved invaluable. She led them through ancient ice tunnels, bioluminescent caverns, and narrow crevices that cut precious hours from their journey. "These paths were created by my ancestors during the Great Migration," she explained, as they traversed a breathtaking ice bridge spanning a seemingly bottomless chasm. "When our world experienced the long winter, we sought refuge in places like this." "Your people built all this?" Rena asked, impressed. Sarah's fingers traced glowing symbols along the wall. "Not built. Grown. Iridon bioelectric energy can reshape certain crystalline structures over time. These pathways are living things in their own way." That evening, they discovered an abandoned supply cache hidden within a small cavern. The provisions were old but still usable, providing a welcome supplement to their dwindling rations. As they ate, Sarah suddenly stiffened. Someone's following us, she whispered. I can sense electromagnetic disturbances behind us. Multiple signatures. Rena checked his scanner, confirming her suspicion. At least 6 heat signatures approximately 3 kilometers back. Moving quickly, Kai. Sarah's voice was barely audible. He's found us. How long until they reach this position? Hours at most. She looked at him with renewed fear. Commander, we can't outrun them. Rena studied the passage ahead, considering their options. Then we don't run. We use your knowledge of these tunnels to our advantage. As Sarah explained the complex network that lay ahead, they huddled close together, their breath mingling in the frigid air. Rena found himself increasingly aware of her proximity, the subtle electric current that seemed to flow between them whenever they touched. If we survive this, he said quietly. What then? Sarah's eyes met his in the dim light. One impossible situation at a time, Commander, she replied, her hand finding his again. But the gentle pressure of her fingers against his suggested possibilities beyond mere survival. Sanctuary Crystal. By midnight they had reached a decision. Sarah guided them deeper into the mountain through passages so narrow they often had to turn sideways to pass. The hunters would struggle to follow, especially with their bulky harvesting equipment. How much farther? Rena whispered, his shoulders scraping against crystalline walls that pulsed faintly at Sarah's proximity. Not far, she replied, her voice echoing strangely in the confined space. There's a sanctuary ahead if the ancient markers are correct. After an hour of claustrophobic travel, the passage suddenly widened, opening into a vast chamber that took Rena's breath away. Towering columns of blue-white crystal stretched from floor to ceiling, their surfaces etched with intricate patterns that glowed in response to Sarah's presence. At the center lay a steaming pool, its surface reflecting the crystalline light above. A thermal spring, Sarah breathed wonder, evident in her voice. The legends spoke of such places, but I never thought. She approached the edge, kneeling to test the water with trembling fingers. Is it safe? Rena asked, scanning the chamber for potential threats. More than safe, she replied with the first genuine smile he had seen on her face. It's healing. The minerals in these waters interact with our bioelectric field, accelerating cellular regeneration. She turned to him, urgency in her eyes. The crystals will mask my signature temporarily. We can rest here. The prospect of warmth after days of bone-deep cold was irresistible. They stripped off their frozen outer layers, hanging them on crystal outcroppings to dry. Rena tried not to stare as Sarah stepped into the pool, her purple skin gleaming in the ethereal light, revealing elegant curves, and the faint network of bioelectric pathways. Beneath her surface, join me, Commander, she called softly. Your body temperature runs higher than mine, but even humans aren't immune to hypothermia. Rena slid into the water with a grateful groan, feeling the mineral-rich heat begin to penetrate his aching muscles. For several minutes, they simply soaked in silence, allowing the warmth to work its magic on their exhausted bodies. Your injuries, Sarah said suddenly, moving closer to examine the lacerations across his chest and arms, wounds accumulated during their harrowing journey that he had barely acknowledged. They're nothing, he dismissed. Minor cuts. Without warning, she placed her palms against his damaged skin. The sensation was electric, literally, as her biofield connected with his, accelerating his body's natural healing. Rena gasped at the intimate contact, at the strange feeling of cells knitting together under her touch. That's remarkable, he managed. When she finished, their faces inches apart. A fair exchange, she whispered. For all you've sacrificed for me. Her eyes, deep violet and flecked with silver, held his gaze. Rena found himself reaching out, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face, his fingers lingering against her cheek. Sarah, he began uncertainly. She closed the distance between them, her lips meeting his tentatively at first. Then with growing certainty. The contact sent sparks of pleasure coursing through Rena's body, intensified by the subtle bioelectric current that flowed. Between them, their exploration of each other was unhurried, a discovery of differences and surprising similarities. Sarah's skin was smoother than human flesh, with a subtle luminescence that brightened at his touch. The bioelectric pathways beneath her surface responded to his caresses, pulsing with increasing intensity as their intimacy deepened. This connection, she murmured against his neck as they moved together in the weightlessness of the pool. I've never experienced anything like it. Rena had no words to describe the sensations overwhelming him as their bodies entwined. Each point of contact between them created cascading waves of pleasure, that seemed to resonate through his entire nervous system. When they finally came together fully, the bioelectric current between them intensified, creating a feedback loop of sensation that transcended mere physical pleasure. Afterward, they floated together in the thermal pool, Sarah's head resting against his chest, their breathing gradually slowing. "In all my research on interspecies connections," she said softly, "I never anticipated this." Rena smiled, tracing the faint patterns on her shoulder. "Is that what we're calling it? Research? Something far more significant, I think," she replied, meeting his gaze. "Your bioelectric signature has changed subtly, becoming more harmonized with mine. It's unprecedented." Before Rena could respond, his scanner beeped with an alert. He reluctantly left the warmth of the pool, checking the readings with growing concern. "The hunters," he confirmed, showing Sarah the display. "They've entered the tunnel system. Still distant, but moving with purpose. Kai must have tracking technology I'm not familiar with," Sarah said, wrapping herself in a thermal blanket. "Even with the crystal interference, he's following us. How many routes lead to this chamber?" "Only the one we used," she replied, studying the ancient symbols etched into the nearest crystal column. "But there are other paths forward. According to these markings, there's a direct route to the surface near the research outpost. And the alternative? A longer path through deeper chambers. Safer, but adding at least a day to our journey." Rena considered their options. "The outpost is our best chance. It should have communication equipment functional enough to call for extraction." He met her eyes. "But it's your choice, Sarah. I won't force you into further danger." She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. "If Kai captures me, he'll take me to his extraction facility. I've seen what happens there." A shudder passed through her. "I'd rather risk the direct path." They allowed themselves a few more precious hours of rest in the sanctuary, gathering strength for what lay ahead. As they prepared to leave, Sarah placed her hands on the central crystal column, closing her eyes in concentration. Purple energy flowed from her fingertips into the crystalline structure. "What are you doing?" Rena asked, fascinated. "Leaving a message for any of my kind who might follow," she explained, "and creating a small disruption in the tunnel behind us. It won't stop Kai for long, but it might slow him down." As they set off through the new passage, Rena noticed how their movements had synchronized her steps, matching his, their bodies instinctively staying close. The connection forged between them in the sanctuary had changed something fundamental, creating a bond that transcended mere physical attraction. "Whatever happens," he said quietly as they approached the final stretch. "I'm glad I found you in that storm." Sarah's fingers intertwined with his. "Perhaps the universe has patterns we're only beginning to understand, Commander." The path ahead narrowed, leading them toward uncertainty. But for the first time since the crash, Rena felt something beyond the will to survive. Something that might even resemble hope. Race against pursuit. The direct path revealed itself as a steep ice tunnel spiraling upward toward the surface. Daylight filtered through crystalline formations, creating prismatic rainbows across the walls. 6 hours to the outpost if we maintain pace, Rena calculated, studying his navigation system. "The hunters are 3 hours behind us and gaining." Sarah nodded grimly, her strength visibly waning despite their rest. The prolonged cold was taking its toll on her bioelectric systems. "I'll manage," she insisted when Rena expressed concern. "My reserves are sufficient." The tunnel eventually opened onto a vast snow-covered valley. The research outpost stood visible on the distant horizon, a small cluster of structures that represented their only hope for survival. "Exposed crossing," Rena muttered, scanning the open terrain. "No cover for at least 4 kilometers. "We have no choice," Sarah replied, squinting against the brilliant reflections. "The alternative paths would take too long." They set out across the valley, moving as quickly as the deep snow allowed. By midday, dark clouds gathered overhead, promising another brutal storm. Rena checked his scanner with increasing frequency, watching as the hunters' signatures steadily gained ground. "They're moving faster than anticipated," he warned. 2 hours behind us now, maybe less." Sarah stumbled, her purple skin taking on a worrying grayish hue. Without comment, Rena lifted her, supporting her weight as they continued their desperate journey. "Commander," she whispered after another kilometer, her voice weakening. "If they capture us, you must promise me something." "They won't capture us. If they do," she insisted, "you must kill me before they can take me to their extraction facility." Rena's steps faltered. Don't ask that of me. What they do to my kind, her fingers tightened on his arm, is worse than death. They drain our bioelectric energy completely, leaving nothing but an empty shell. Please. Before he could respond, Sarah suddenly stiffened. Multiple signatures approaching from the east, she warned. Not the main hunting party, something else. Rena checked his scanner, confirming her assessment. Scout drones, most likely. He pulled her toward a small ice formation, the only cover visible. They've split their forces to surround us. As they huddled behind the meager shelter, Rena made a decision. I'll create a diversion, he said, checking his blaster's charge. Head for the outpost while I draw them off. No. Sarah gripped his arm, her eyes fierce despite her weakened state. We stay together. Sarah, our bioelectric signatures have partially synchronized, she explained urgently. I can mask both of us together better than separately. She placed her hands on either side of his face, initiating the same connection they had shared in the sanctuary. This time Rena felt her consciously manipulating the energy between them, creating a harmonized pattern that felt strangely familiar, yet alien. What did you do? He asked when she finished, her skin now dangerously pale. Temporarily altered our combined signature, she whispered. The drones are programmed to seek Iridon energy patterns. We should register as background radiation. They waited in tense silence as the drone signatures circled nearby, eventually moving away to continue their search elsewhere. It worked. Rena breathed, helping Sarah to her feet. But you've drained yourself. A necessary sacrifice. She managed a weak smile. The outpost is less than 2 hours away now. As they resumed their journey, Rena supported more of Sarah's weight with each passing step. The connection between them had deepened beyond physical attraction, beyond even the bioelectric resonance they shared. In the face of death, they had found something neither had been searching for, something worth fighting to preserve. The outpost grew larger on the horizon as afternoon faded into evening. Behind them, the hunters closed the gap, their signatures now clearly visible on Rena's scanner. Almost there, he encouraged, as Sarah stumbled again, just a little further. She nodded wordlessly, her strength nearly spent. When the first structures of the abandoned outpost finally appeared before them, Rena felt a surge of desperate hope. We made it, he said, half carrying Sarah through the entry airlock. Now we just need to get the communication systems online. Final stand. The research outpost stood silent and empty, its systems on minimal power after years of abandonment. Rena quickly located the main control room, settling Sarah into a chair before checking the communications array. Partial functionality, he reported with cautious optimism. Enough to send a distress signal if I can boost the power. Sarah nodded weakly, her bioelectric pathways flickering erratically beneath her skin. How long until a response? If any Alliance vessels are within range, perhaps an hour. Rena's expression darkened as he checked his scanner. The hunters will be here in 20 minutes. Then we need to prepare. Sarah attempted to stand, swaying dangerously. You need to rest. Rena guided her back to the chair. I'll secure the perimeter. Working frantically, Rena activated the outpost's remaining security system, setting traps at key entry points. He had just finished sending the distress signal when the scanner warned of multiple signatures approaching from the south. They're here, he told Sarah, checking his blaster one final time. At least 8 of them, including their leader. Sarah's eyes met his with grim determination. Kai won't stop until he has what he came for. The first explosion rocked the outpost's main entrance. Rena's traps had claimed at least 2 of the hunters, but the others pressed forward undeterred. Security monitors showed armored figures moving through the outer corridors with practiced efficiency. Commander Rena. A cold voice echoed through the communication system. I am Kai. You have something that belongs to me. She belongs to no one. Rena replied, positioning himself between Sarah and the sealed control room door. The Iridon female is valuable property, Kai continued. Her bioelectric signature is uniquely potent. Surrender her and you may leave unharmed. Go to hell, Rena muttered, cutting the communication link. Sarah rose unsteadily, approaching him with newfound resolve. I have an idea, she said, placing her hands on his chest. But it requires something I've never attempted with a non-Iridon. Whatever it takes. Rena agreed without hesitation. A full bioelectric fusion, she explained urgently. Temporary but powerful enough to overload their harvesting equipment. Before Rena could respond, the control room door shuddered under heavy impact. The hunters had reached them. Sarah pulled Rena close, their foreheads touching. "Trust me," she whispered. The connection formed instantly, more powerful than anything they had shared before. Rena gasped as their bioelectric fields merged completely, creating a surge of energy that illuminated the entire room with brilliant purple light. Memories and sensations flowed freely between them, their separate consciousness momentarily unified. When the door finally burst open, Kai entered first, his harvesting apparatus, humming with anticipation. He stopped short at the sight before him, Rena and Sarah standing in the center of the room, surrounded by a swirling vortex of purple energy. "Impossible." Kai breathed, his instruments crackling with feedback. "Human physiology can't sustain—" Sarah raised her hand, directing a concentrated pulse of their combined energy directly at the harvesting equipment. The resulting explosion sent Kai and his hunters flying backward, their systems overloading in cascading failure. The effort nearly destroyed them both. As their connection broke, Rena caught Sarah as she collapsed, both of them barely conscious as emergency alarms blared throughout the outpost. "Did we?" Sarah whispered, her voice faint. "We did," Rena confirmed, holding her close. "Alliance response team incoming. Estimated arrival 15 minutes. Sarah's fingers traced his face weakly. "The bioelectric fusion, it should have killed you. Stubborn, remember?" Rena managed a smile despite his exhaustion. "Humans don't die easily." As Alliance forces secured the outpost, neutralizing the remaining hunters, Rena and Sarah were evacuated to a medical frigate. Recovery was slow, their bodies adapting to the lingering effects of the unprecedented bioelectric fusion. "Your cellular structure has been permanently altered," the ship's doctor informed Rena, reviewing his scans with bewilderment. "Nothing dangerous, but you're carrying trace iridon bioelectric patterns now." "And Sarah?" "Recovering well," the doctor replied. "She's asking for you." He found her in the observation deck, gazing at the stars, her purple skin once again luminescent with health. She turned as he entered, a smile brightening her features. "Commander, I think we're well past titles," he said, joining her by the viewport. Sarah's hand found his, their fingers intertwining naturally. "The Alliance has offered me research position at their Xenobiology Institute," she said after a moment. "Studying interspecies bioelectric compatibility." "Sounds fascinating," Rena replied. "They've offered me a new mapping assignment. Outer colonies need proper navigation charts, apparently. Far from here?" "Not necessarily," he turned to face her. "The Institute and my new assignment are on the same station." Sarah's eyes met his, the connection between them pulsing with renewed energy. "One impossible situation at a time?" "Something like that," Rena agreed, drawing her closer. Against all odds, they had found each other in the frozen wilderness, forged a bond. Neither had been seeking and emerged forever changed. As their lips met again, the subtle current between them strengthened a promise of possibilities neither had imagined before. Their paths crossed in the merciless Cryos Mountains.